It's 8:30, ladies. If y'all want to go ahead and introduce yourselves and we'll get going, and I'll keep watching the chat and admit people. Melanie was wondering if people would be willing to put their particular role at their school in the chat, please. I'll try to read those.
Good morning, y'all. Thanks for coming out so early. I'm really glad that you're starting your day with us. My name is Carol Baker. I'm the Director of Outreach and Community Engagement at the South Carolina Governor's School for the Arts and Humanities, which is that SCGSAH. It's like, what is that bunch of letters? That's what that is. I'm calling in from my office up here in Greenville, South Carolina. And I'm joined by with Melanie Trimble. Melanie is our project director for this, our grant director. And she's going to be handling a lot of the logistics and getting down to deeper dive information as we go. So I want to just give you a quick outline of what you can expect for the session. I always like it when folks do that for me. And then we'll get started. So first of all, what to expect, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to place a little bit of context about why we're even having this conversation today. Give you a little bit of information about why the Governor's School and Read to Succeed are even connected, because that's a bit of a weird thing. Like, what do they have to do with each other? Why are we even having this conversation to begin with? We're going to talk, this is going to be talking about a very specific outreach program that we run called Spark. So Melanie is the person who handles all of that now. So she will then kind of take the reins. She's going to walk us through a lesson plan. She's going to kind of help us understand a little bit about what drama looks like in a literacy setting, what it means. When we talk about drama, what are we talking about? We're not necessarily talking about putting on a play, some of the more sort of details down in that level. And then we'll definitely give you a chance to ask questions at the end, because we do want to make sure that we leave room for that. So if you have questions along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat. If it's something we can address in the moment, we will. And if it's something that we need to address at the end, we'll also do that. But we'll make sure that we try to get to as many of those as possible. So first of all, let me just tell you what the deal is here. So the Governor's School has two parts of its mission. And some of you actually saw a couple of names in here that are familiar, not too many, but a few. The first part of the school's mission is clearly to teach our students. We teach students from all of your schools, all of your districts, all of your communities. They come to us as juniors and seniors in the 5 art areas: music, dance, drama, visual arts, and creative writing. They're here, it's high school, they are living on our campus, they're doing their pre-professional arts training. And that's a big chunk of what we do. That's a huge part of our mission. But the other part of our mission is actually 2 parts, is to be a resource to teachers and students across the state. And that's actually part of our legislative founding proviso. Like, that's a requirement. That is something that we are supposed to be doing and that we take very, very seriously. So kind of the way that we center that conversation, because y'all, that's a really big task. It's a big task. We're just going to provide resources for everyone. Like, that just feels a little overwhelming, right? So we try to pay attention to what's happening in the education and in the arts education community. And we listen very, very carefully and very, very closely, so that when big pieces of legislation, like, for example, Read to Succeed, come up, we have an opportunity to step back and reflect and see, is there an opportunity for us to be a part of that conversation? Sometimes there is nothing. We are not going to be the right fit for you. This is not the place for us to be. Interestingly, though, for Read to Succeed, there was an opportunity for us. And so that's how we kind of got started and got involved in this, and the reason why we got started and involved in this. Spark started as a pilot around 2016, which, if you know about Read to Succeed and the history of Read to Succeed, that's right at sort of those beginning stages of when it was really getting into that heavy legislative mode and sort of out of idea mode, right into something that was really serious and had legitimate repercussions. We had a conversation with the South Carolina Arts Commission, and we were curious about how could the arts be part of the solution? What could the arts do to support young readers, knowing that this information, this legislation was coming? And there's a lot of ways you could take that. But one of the pieces that we felt that was really, really authentic and really, really made sense was to look at ways to connect drama with reading and story. If you've done any level of integrated work, if you've done any level of like collaboration with anyone across the building, which I'm sure every one of you has 20 times over, you know that what you want first and foremost is for that partnership to make sense. You want it to be legitimate. And there is a very, very strong connection between drama, literacy, reading, and story. We happened that same summer to have already hired somebody who was working in the field for us. One of our outreach summer folks, her name is Ann Tromsness. She's been working for us for years. She also happens to one of our outreach drama, fantastic specialists across the board, but she happens to have a really strong background in elementary drama, which was super helpful for us in the moment. We did a really quick little short pilot residency with Williamsburg County. And in that moment, we realized we had a really, really exciting opportunity. And so we agreed with the Arts Commission to enter into a 5-year pilot to really do some research and to explore and to learn what kind of lessons we could find to see what on earth would happen if we were to continue this project and to continue to add a drama component on to those summer Read to Succeed camps. So as you know, those Read to Succeed camps, those are they're scripted. They are not things you mess with. You've got curriculum you have to teach, and we completely know that and understand that. Our role was to come in and sort of expand and pull it up, pull it out. So what we've been doing for the last 5 years in Williamsburg County, we were then able to add on Jasper County, and then COVID hit and everything got weird. But so we've worked in Williamsburg and Jasper, adding on this additional piece. And in that process, doing some research with the University of South Carolina to see what we can learn from that project. So I'm going to show you a quick video. This is actually from an awards thing, so you'll hear a little jabber around that. Just kind of ignore that. But just a minute and a half, and it kind of gives you a glimpse into the project. And then I'm going to we'll talk a little bit more about where we're headed with this. So let me see if I can do this. Give me a second to make sure I don't kick anybody out accidentally. All right, let's share my screen. Okay, screen 2. All right, can y'all see that?
The Governor's School for the Arts and Humanities is a public residential high school in Greenville, South Carolina. We serve students from all 46 counties of the state in pre-professional programs in the arts and humanities. I'm very proud with the work we've done with our SPARK program. It's our drama-based literacy enhancement program for elementary students.
A lot of these students struggle with reading. They have emotional attachments to reading that can be really hard and difficult for them. And what we want to do is recognize that stories can really be fun.
We get to live inside of the books through theater activities such as group playmaking, creating scenes together, creating some design elements like costumes, superhero capes, some puppets and masks. Just a lot of taking books and bringing them to life through collaboration and imagination and exploring them together. What we find is that students who may not love to sit and read a book or even sit and have a book read to them really love to be a character or to make a scene. It's a great way to get students to think differently about books and to see possibilities within them.
Because of the trends that we found with the success of our SPARK program, we know that this drama-enhanced program will allow these students a level of success through the arts that will tie into what they're able to learn academically and, of course, be more successful students in the future.
Innovation's hard to measure. It's hard to land on. So when you have folks who can step back and look at it with a third-party lens and say, no, we agree, this is really exciting and different and something to look at and pay more attention to, this award really gives us something to be able to say, hey, there's some value here.
And I'm hoping, all right, y'all seeing me again? Are you still looking at my screen share? We good? Great.
You're good.
Thumbs up. I always get worried that I forget a last little step in that. And everybody's like, no, I'm looking at something else fun. So just a kind of a quick sort of understanding of our role here. We are not the reading specialist. That's not what we do. None of us are trained reading specialists. We are not, we also recognize and understand with Read to Succeed the level of intense training that has to happen. We are full, we get that. We don't want to disrupt what is already happening. What we want to do is expand and build out. So in our research and in the work that we do, what we're looking at are things like motivation. We're looking at divergent thinking, creative thinking. That could be helping students feel emotionally attached to the character. That could be helping students be interested in wanting to pick up that book that you were then, as a reading specialist, going to help them actually have the skill to read, right? It's sort of this idea of a really complex, full, complete reader, and the role that drama can play in adding into that reading experience for the child. So the research has been handled through the University of South Carolina. Melanie will talk a little bit more about that, but that's really the goal of this particular program. The other great thing about this program that's exciting is that because of this pilot, because of these sort of initial trends, y'all, very small data samples, please know we're not making any big claims here. These are tiny, tiny data samples. There's enough information in there for the Arts Commission to trust and say, hey, we would like to scale this up. So we're now moving past just that summer reading camp into a full year-long experience. And we've got specific counties that we were working in, specific sort of parameters for that. And so we're part of the ArtsGrow SC investment in arts education through the Arts Commission, through the State Department of Education. And we're really excited to learn and see and grow with the state to see what happens when we add drama in, not just during those summer reading camps, but throughout the year. So Melanie, I'm going to toss over to you and let you kind of get down into some of the details of this.
Sounds good. So I was part of the pilot project for several of the summers down in Williamsburg County, and those were very short and intense experiences. The kids received instruction 4 days a week after. So the morning was the reading intensive instruction component, and then the afternoon during the enrichment, we did our drama enhancement. So they got 4 days a week. For some summers it was 3, some summers it was 6. It just varied by how their camp was structured, but it was a very short time to build. And even with a lot of attendance stuff, as you know, in the summer, attendance can be an issue, and consistent attendance to the end can be an issue. Even with that, the research trends were upwards. So this is MAP data or STAR data, depending on what year. And their own self-measure of themselves as motivated to read and how they saw themselves as readers. And all of those things trended upward. They were tiny data sets, as Carol said, and you have to throw out if you don't have a post-test or a pre-test for any one child. And so they're really small samples, but all the data was trending upwards. And the goal was to bring them into a state of excitement and enjoyment of reading, to just support the work that the reading specialists were doing in the specific skills. So with this longer residency, what we hope is, often what you find is, obviously, if you have a longer dosage of instruction or a longer dosage of an intervention, you hope to see higher gains or more result. So we're looking at doing things where we go into the schools that agree, and we continue to participate in the summer residencies, the summer camps for 1 year, but we also have residencies during the year, so that each school that participates would have an actor teacher, a drama specialist, trained in the methodology that we're using, to do 2 days a week for many weeks, for 15 to 20 weeks. And the third grade would receive the most intensive focus. So we're planning to offer third grade weekly drama groups for the entire residency, and the other grades would get shorter groups, 3 or 4 groups, just to build the drama understanding of the whole school. So the direct instruction is focusing on third grade and supplementally focusing on all the other grades. And each grade has a different goal, which builds, but the third grade has many goals, including plot, elaboration, setting, understanding of character. So there are structures that are related to ELA standards that we're teaching. There are structures that are related to drama standards. And then there are the general profile of the graduate kind of skills like ensemble and cooperation. So we're looking at being intensive within the school, providing a drama-rich environment to the school, bringing in outside collaborators to perform, bringing in storytellers, possibly regional authors to talk to the kids, just kind of creating a slightly drama-rich environment for that year while doing the direct skills. The secondary layer of this is providing demonstration and modeling and co-facilitation or co-planning with teachers who are interested in using some of these. So we've spent a good bit of our energy looking at which of the drama skills that we use are transferable to someone who doesn't come from a drama background and who may be uncomfortable with this sort of thing. So we've narrowed what we're teaching down to what we feel are the most useful types of enactment strategies and elaboration strategies for a classroom teacher to use in their content area if they're interested in arts integration. So this can work in other things besides ELA. And we will be doing those in the classroom with the kids, teaching the kids the structure so that it's much easier for the classroom teacher to experiment with those, planning ahead with the drama specialist or not. The kids will have a sense of how to do it already. The teachers will have watched it happen potentially, and will be able to meet with a drama specialist, by arrangement to co-plan a lesson or to get suggestions on how to facilitate. So we're hoping that that sort of on-site mentoring will make the difference for the teachers who are interested in implementing any of these things in whatever classroom, instead of having to go off-site or having a one-off 200-person professional learning opportunity. We sort of think the mentoring and the demonstration model in the classroom will make a bigger difference and make it more accessible. Some of these things won't fit for everybody. We're also looking at finding local artists, facilitating local funding, finding ways to sustain this after we are no longer in the school. So this is a 3-year grant, and we would be affiliated with any school for the whole period, but only in the school 2 days a week for one of the grant years. The school would receive all the wraparound services of performers and help with trying to find funding and connections to local artists and mentoring of teachers. That would continue for the whole grant period, but the services within the school in the classroom school day are for during a 1-year school period, and one summer. So when we look at this, we want to say why. People say, why drama? Right? Are you just playing? We can all get up and play and be silly with kids and they'll be really happy, which is true. Sure. But when we're looking at drama strategies that we bring in, we are teaching profile skills and standards, ELA and theater standards, both. And our lesson plans include a book. They include an activation strategy of getting the children interested in the book. And they include an activation enactment strategy, getting the kids on their feet. And so this is a way of getting the kids who have some anxiety approaching the actual physical book or read alouds or the skills, getting them interested in the book around the sideways by using their body to create a character, or using their body to create statues about something, or talking with another person and planning an interview about a character, and doing things that are not about the word on the page or writing on the page to start with. We're using picture books because we have a limited time. We're using picture books, so they're not necessarily grade level, but they're engaging with the kids to teach them metaphor and character and setting and elaboration and choices and alternate endings and all of those kind of structures, so that we can get them more interested in grade level books for you to work with them. So within a shortened time frame, obviously a drama specialist could come in and read a chapter book, but that would not be the most creative use of their time. But we hope in these residencies that whatever is going on in the classroom, the teachers will be able to communicate with the actor teacher. And if the entire 4th grade is doing a read along of a chapter book, we can look at ways to apply our lessons to that book, for example, and adjust for what the school is already doing. So we're not using our time within the drama time to read aloud a book, but we can take that book and show strategies that are embodied or expansive and how we would use them with that story. So there's some questions sometimes people have about this use of picture books, but it gets the kids who are nervous about books engaged, and we're trying to jumpstart around the anxiety and get them fully involved, and then challenge them to find more stories and challenge them to think about stories that they're reading in the classroom and how we could enact with those, or how they could do more of this work with the books that they're being asked to read in their grade level. So we're not doing production. This is another confusion. Sometimes people say, well, are you going to do a play at the end, right? And everybody's parent wants a Facebook picture of their kid on stage. But this is a process oriented. Our intention is process. Our intention is the internal life of that child and their engagement with books. And it's not about showing some skill of performance to other people. That's much more directive. Putting on a play, there's a lot of telling children what to do and making them be still and wait. And at this point, that's not necessarily the most productive use of their time. And in fact, National Theater Standards suggest that productions under grade 4 are really inappropriate. It's just not developmentally appropriate for them. So we're looking at process. They'll never have to perform for anyone except each other in the group, which also hopefully brings down the anxiety around playing with the book rather than producing the book. We're playing with it, which allows for alternate endings. And what if you were in the character? What if something else happened? What if this was in a different setting entirely? And by engaging their imagination, they can apply it to situations they know more about, and they can feel more competency about a story, or more competency about the plot or the particular character choices, and feel a connection more to the characters in the book and hopefully want to read more about them. So a lesson plan for us, I'm just looking to see if there's any questions like so far about the structure of this. This is also, we have certain counties we can go into in more detail, and we're in conversation with several school districts, and we're prioritizing smaller schools where we feel we can reach every child, schools that maybe are less frequently having productions come in or traveling tour or have really much arts engagement coming in. And we're prioritizing programs, schools that do not already have drama programming or do not already have ABC arts in basic curriculum grant funding and those sort of things. So we're really trying to seek out the kids who really aren't getting this at all in any other way. And we're open to working with media specialists and classroom teachers and just a whole lot of different variety. We're trying to be pretty flexible because every school is different. So a lesson plan, I'm going to screen share a lesson plan. And this is from a summer, just to say, this is from our summer program. And so we could go quickly because we saw them 4 days a week. Sometimes we could go a little more quickly. There wasn't quite as much review, but you'll see that we use a lot of enactment, and there's a book every day until the 4th day, the culminating day. They kind of did a summative activity. So I'll walk you through that for a second. So the Spark Summer Plans, this was week 3. So they've already engaged with 2 weeks of drama. So we've taught them some basic skills. There's a group structure created. There's expectations already created about coming into the room and how we begin and what basic terminology means. And you'll see that there's a guiding question. For this week, it was, how can I use my body to create characters and tell stories? So we were focusing on movement and imagination that an actor needs to create a story out of a book. The vocabulary mime for the week, pantomime and mime was the vocabulary word we were working on. And you can see that we have standards alignment. We didn't put the drama standards on here because we just know what they are, and we didn't put them on these lesson plans in this particular summer. But we've got ELA standards. These are not the up-to-date ones because this is from a couple years ago. Profile of the graduate, characteristics addressed. And then the book that's going to be used, Fox and Friends. So every group starts with a warm-up, like a greeting, a warm-up, just as you would in a classroom. I taught 9 years K-5 drama in the elementary classroom. And I have a background in drama therapy and a lot of things. So when you run a group, you always need a structure. And so we believe in higher structure to start with and help the kids be comfortable, competent, know what the expectations are. So every group starts in a certain way, welcoming in, resetting expectations as needed, review, warm up, getting them focused. And then there's an activating strategy. Sometimes that's reading the book and sometimes it's previewing a skill. In this case, it was reviewing the previous week. They had a new instructor this week, so they had to preview the previous week and go over the agreements and expectations. And then pantomime. So the teaching artist taught them pantomime, and you can see it's staged in the same way you teach anything. You need to start with the individual skills, and then you can put them together into something larger. So the actor teacher taught pantomime outside of the story and then reads the story down here at activity 2. Reads the story and discusses the plot points and what needs to happen. And then the children are guided through working on creating a pantomime based on the book with some openness as to changing what happens and changing the ending. So there's a lot of side coaching, small group work once a group is working at this level. And the teaching artist is walking around making sure the groups are functioning, and that speaks to a lot of the profiles of the graduate skills. And then there's a closing or cool down activity. And in this summer, we were heavily written, which sometimes worked and sometimes didn't. So we were working very much on making dictionaries and dictionary definitions and learning the vocabulary, and did visual assessments of their work and their cooperation skills and journal entry about those. So we don't do quizzes and that sort of assessment. We do a lot of formative assessments in the moment alongside all of these activities. So this would be like day 1 of week 3. So this is group 9 in a summer. And then it goes on. So this is the Tuesday lesson, and this document keeps going. But you can see, like, this is the next day of the week, and they did the Paper Crane. So the Paper Crane is also a book that has a lot of setting and movement and physical relationship of one character to another. So in the drama world, we look for those sort of things where you could involve improvisation. So imagine a scene between these two characters. There's not much in this book about what they say to each other. What could they be saying? So a pair and share about that is a way to elaborate on the book structure imaginatively and get the kids more invested in the character because they get to imbue that character with more words. And then a drama specialist can facilitate that turning into a dialogue, a scene, or an interview session if they need a higher level of structure. So the younger children need a higher level of structure, and the actor teacher can interview the characters and have them share outward to the group what they discovered the characters were saying. This is a way of taking one structure and working from a book and just building out as far as they can go, connecting them to the book by imbuing it with their own thoughts and ideas about it. And then hearing from the others. And they start to see that books can be flexible, that we can play with what happens, we can change things about them, we can learn more about the characters by looking more deeply at the pictures or thinking about it in another way, giving the characters a family, and that sort of thing. So they go through, in this lesson plan, you can see that we go through several books. I'm just trying to go down, which is hard to do in screen share. I lose track of where I am. And every day you can see there's standards, there's profile, connection, and then it has the specific strategies of what we do. This is how we discovered what we thought would work best for elementary teachers to be able to use. Some of these are a little more advanced. And if you saw it a bunch of times, you might feel comfortable. Some of them not so much. Tableau is a concept that a lot of teachers are familiar with if they've done a little bit of Sean Lane or worked in any drama at all. And Tableau can be very useful for this. Some of the things we do are on paper. We might have them do a storyboard of what happens next in a scene in a book. This week, the third day, they moved to Grace for President, which is another storybook. So this is the third storybook this week, and into a discussion about heroes. How can I use my body to create characters and stories, tell stories? So we've done the tell stories part a little bit, and now it's shifted to create characters for the week. And through using Grace for President and some pantomime, they created characters of superheroes. That was the pictures that you saw earlier as well. So they created characters of superheroes, identified traits that are about themselves, what they would change about the world if they were trying to be running for office or being a superhero, what would be their superhero skills. And that was more worksheet based. So we get them into writing once we've gotten them through some ideas of how to expand their thinking about character, use their bodies to enjoy it and engage with the character. As we get to this next group, we're leveling up and we're having them write some things about a character and create. And it's an easier transition because it's something they're attracted to in superheroes. And it's somewhat biographical. What are traits about yourself? And kids like that kind of thing. So we're moving along a progression. So they created their heroes. And then on the last day of the week, they were able to do some drama work with the heroes, make a mask, which y'all saw. And all of the strategies, the warm-ups and the activations had to do with this superhero theme, which was their kind of culminating activity of this week. Because in the summer, it's easier to block it by a week at a time. Over a 15 or 16 or 18-week residency in a school, it's a slightly different structure because it's more, there's not a build to a Thursday and then a 4-day break. So that is a sample lesson plan, which I think we're going to be able to share with you in the links. Not in the chat, but afterwards when the video link is made available. So each class, assuming 45 minutes, is a focusing activity, warming up, getting them oriented to what we're doing, warm-up strategy to get them either opened up to the book or opened up to the tactic we're going to teach that day. And in the course of our enactment strategies, we read the book, we discuss the book, we elaborate on what we're going for that day. We have a theme, which might be collaboration or setting or character or plot. And then we use the book and get them up on their feet at doing some portion of the book using the enactment strategy that we think is relevant to a classroom teacher using in other content area. And then we have a reflection and closure. So our structure kind of follows a drama class model. And the reflection and closure sometimes involves writing. Sometimes the elaboration activity involves writing. Kind of varies by the book and what is most and where they are in their learning of the skills. So you sometimes have an artifact of learning at the end. Sometimes the artifact of learning is the visual understanding of what they did together and watching them learn to collaborate and learn to discuss options and think through what could happen in the story or think through why a character does what they do. So sometimes it's a visual assessment of what's happening in the room, and sometimes you can get it on paper. And then we finish for the week and move on. And the next week it's a new story. Usually we rarely spend 2 classes on one story. We did with the superheroes. That was a really very enlivening activity for them. They got them very invested in the work. But usually it's a story a week. And we plan on 3rd grade being able to do this hopefully for like 15 to 18 weeks straight up. And kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 4th, and 5th, we would do 3 or 4 sessions for every class. And they were pretty much the same. They're just like a kindergarten 3 sessions would be simpler. It'd just be like, how can I even use my body to be in a story? Not waiting my turn, but all doing the story at the same time, very process drama. Whereas all the way up to 5th grade, we realized that 5th grade, there's a script element in SC Ready. So the 5th grade lesson plans that we've developed are very focused on teaching them how to read and understand a script and learn how to get information from the script, because there's not a lot of description in a script usually, and you have to infer it. And so teaching them how to do that and getting some scripts up on their feet, really short little scripts that are age appropriate, that are 5th grade appropriate, but for use in teaching them how to approach a script and even know why are these in italics? Why is this, why does this look this way, and how does one use it? And how do I figure out what happened before? Because there's no paragraph at the top saying what happened before. And so we have the 5th grade lessons look a little bit different because we decided to approach script, since we know that's in this SC Ready standards. But the other grades are all about picture book and then getting them up on their feet and taking off from there. So we think this has applications, for any classroom really, based on the comfort level of the teacher with the enactment strategies and based on what is trying to be taught. Anne and I have taught arts integration in summer events, retreats, in which, we were teaching science teachers to use drama skills to teach weather, so a lot of these things are applicable. And for me, it's about, can a teacher figure out a structure they feel comfortable with that can be reused across content? So nobody needs to learn all the drama skills to bring these things into their classroom. But if we present 4 or 5 that we think work really well in the classroom and are manageable, and 1 is attractive or 2 are attractive to the teacher, like, oh, I like that, I can see how I can use that, then they can get comfortable with that one. And then you don't reteach. You know how it is with kids. If you can teach a structure that you then apply to a lot of things, that's a much more useful skill, and it creates a sense of competency and an openness to approaching the work, because they know what's about to happen and they know how to approach that activity. And so we're kind of looking at it in the same way with teachers. If a teacher can get a couple of strategies that they can then apply to different content areas or apply to different books, that may be the most useful. And watching someone else do it and sometimes have to re-explain or have to reteach, watching that happen is maybe some of the best ways to learn a really new strategy for people. So that's our thinking. We really feel strongly that this is very aligned with the profile of the graduate category, all those things. And we are clearly seeing lots of alignment with standards, ELA and theater standards. And those are on every lesson plan. If anyone's interested, they just make the lesson plans really long. Y'all's ELA standards are huge. But we are aligning every lesson with those things, and for every grade. And we, as drama people, know that the profiles of the graduate, collaboration, problem solving, all of those things are much harder to measure in standardized testing in some ways, but those are very strongly embedded in drama. And they're very strongly embedded in small group learning and in classroom learning. So if we can assist in that way as well, we're pretty happy to do that. So I think I covered everything. Y'all heard.
Well, that's wonderful, Melanie. Melanie and Carol. No, you didn't. That is wonderful. You left us time if anybody has any questions and they want to unmute to ask. I noticed that Carol did put Melanie's email in the chat. She didn't put hers. But as Melanie said, that lesson plan link will be linked to the video after today's sessions are completed. They will be posted and they will be sent out so that you know where to find those. But if anyone has any questions, and I did notice that Nisa said that she had worked with you in Williamsburg and was wondering what had happened to you. So where's Nisa? If she wants to say
Here I
anything
am.
about her experience.
I'll be seeing you soon, I hope.
Hey, how are you?
Doing all right.
This is really cool for me because the year that you guys piloted in Williamsburg County, I worked the summer school that year, and so like I remember hearing about it and what you guys were trying to do, but I didn't know like the name of the group. I couldn't remember it, and so now I don't maybe like 6-7 years later to now finally be like, oh, that's the lady is really cool for me. So I would love to. So, and now I'm actually over our summer reading camp. And so, yeah, I'm really excited about like being able to hopefully bring you guys into our building to work with our kiddos.
Oh, super. It'd be so fun to see you again. We loved working in Williamsburg. That was great. Yeah, we have, so the counties, the Arts Grow funding, is statewide, but there are several partners. So we chose to focus on certain counties, and they're just sort of having conversations. And the whole PD was of interest to us. We just sort of felt like we wanted to strengthen our reach out into that area and understand more about that area. So Williamsburg County, Georgetown County, Florence, Marion, Dillon, Darlington, Lee, maybe the back end of Horry County, away the furthest away from Myrtle Beach that gets a little ignored. And then the other general zone is sort of some parts of Richland, and then up into Saluda, Newberry, Lawrence, Greenwood, maybe a little Fairfield. We're sort of figuring out what areas need a little bit of more, just the offer and the coverage. So Williamsburg is definitely in that gang.
Awesome.
Yeah. So the one thing about, I would say our lesson plan, I will say, is usually it's about for a 40-45 minute period. We've done longer, we've done shorter, but if you're doing small groups, I noticed I was seeing there were a lot of reading coaches and reading interventionists, and often that's a small group thing. So the nice part about some of what we're doing is that if you have a small group, everything moves a little more quickly, and you don't have to spend quite as much time. You already have your ritual, you already have your get together, whatever you do to get together, and that in a small group setting, you can more or less pick and choose some of these things. So it's not that one would have to do an entire lesson plan. That's what we're doing because we're the drama specialists. But for example, some of these tactics that we're teaching or demonstrating could be used in a small group setting. So you're working on something and it's technical, and they're making progress, but they need a little break. And then you have learned this tactic of, well, let's do this. Let's do sock puppet. Let's do interview. Let's do a couple of statues of the places in this book that we are like what the character did or didn't like what the character did, and get them on their feet for a minute, but it's still attached to what you're doing, and then get them back into the technical side of it. So in some ways, these can be brain breaks, but they're not the kind of like completely non sequitur brain breaks. They're moving what you're already doing into the imaginative realm or into the physical realm, and then back into the brain to do the technical work. And so part of why we chose these particular strategies is that they can be done at the smallest level, most of them not all of them, but some of them in kindergarten, or in small groups for just a few minutes, or they can be quite expansive if you're really needing to get the kids, back engaged in the work and motivated. So I noticed that a lot of people are probably doing small group work, and that's something that I'm open to conversations about. And if we come into a school, that's a conversation to have. Like the actor teacher can meet with, or I can come down and meet with people who are doing small group work. The special ed teacher, we can meet with anybody and do kind of one-on-one mentoring of like, how can this help me in what I'm doing in this structure, in this size? And that's really important. I think that's often what is not happening. As a former elementary related areas teacher, I just never saw anybody else do anything drama. And there weren't any people mentoring me individually and seeing like, oh, she's in a portable, so it's very loud. So like she needs this, and this would work in this. This is her structure and this is her schedule. How can we adjust to that? So we hope to come in and be able to really see what you're dealing with and kind of help think through what might work best for your particular situation instead of kind of a giant cookie cutter.
And Melanie, I can't help but keep thinking, dramatic play is so important in the preschool and think it kind of gets ignored sometimes now in 5K.
Yes.
But this is a wonderful way to get that back into with more structure, but still the freedom to do the drama. But I'm just brainstorming all kinds of things in my head after this. This has been wonderful. Anyone else have any questions? I'm getting ready to drop the link for you to fill out for participating today, but we'd love to hear questions if you have any while I'm doing that.
I actually have one more question.
Go ahead.
Did you say that the lesson plans are about 45 minutes? Like as I'm planning, my camp, I'm thinking of like, if we're able to partner, how much time would I need to allot for our kiddos to work with you guys?
Yeah, they tend to be, 40 minutes is probably minimum for third grade, especially because you hate to cut them off right when they're really getting into it. So especially in the summer, they can be pretty jumpy and busy. So it's good to have at least 40 minutes. 45 or 50 is great. And I know in Williamsburg, we were doing sometimes 2 back-to-back, 2 groups and that sort of thing. And that worked well. We know that there are blocks that are chunked out for certain things. So some counties seem to need enrichment arts in the morning and some need it in the afternoon. And we can kind of be flexible, but probably 40 to 50 minutes is about the right amount for one of these groups. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
And we've been doing Monday through Thursday because a lot of times Fridays are field trips and other things. It just seems like Fridays we're not working. So we've been doing Monday through Thursday in the summer camps.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. I see a hand. Somebody's got their hand technology going.
Yes, ma'am. Jack Hutto here from Hampton County. And I appreciate the opportunity, and I've learned so much. And I work at the district level, but I have a music background and drama as well. But I can see maybe modeling what you've done with, I'm always looking for opportunities for, now we will have a reading camp, but I'm always looking for opportunities for high achieving students too. Mm-hmm. And I could see modeling the same process. So would you be willing to be a sounding board for my teachers that might want to do something very similar, but kind of on the opposite spectrum, I guess, to really give opportunities to maybe for some high achieving students to push them further, but maybe using the same skills and techniques.
Right. I'm always happy to be a sounding board for that. And I also know, I think Richland 1 combines 2 types of summer camps, and they kind of come into a cluster model. And they have the Read to Succeed, I believe, this is in the past, the Read to Succeed camp happening at the same site as campers they're trying to boost into AAP. So they have 2 whole different groups of kids that are coming in. And so they may have some thoughts as well, the people who are running the Richland 1 district, about how they're doing programming for the 2 different groups in the enrichment programming. Sure. I didn't work it, but I know that they structured it that way. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure. I noticed there was kindergarten teacher in here, and I think, there's, in the kindergarten standards, I think still are like community role and really thinking through role. And it's lovely how that really can coincide. And so role play and stations, in the younger grades are sometimes a way that you've got to structure the kids understand it's a station, it's how we are doing this, but then you can look for books that go along with it to boost reading. And there are ways to facilitate going from book to stations and back too in kindergarten. And those are some things that probably lots of people are already doing that are not drama teachers, but that's what occurs to me as a drama teacher when I was teaching kindergarten, that the books about role were really inviting to them. And then they already had a kind of structure for that mentally in their classroom. Finger puppets are also immensely popular with kindergarten, using cardstock and cutout, and then they can really engage in dialogue, which is a very high level skill for kindergarten, first grade. But they each have an elephant and a piggy drawn finger puppet. You read the book, they engage, and they're taking in the information about character, and you're encouraging them to think of the characters, right? And have the characters talk to one another with the traits, and then you can come back to another book and confirm, well, does this match what you understand about these characters? What words do they like to use? And it kind of links it to a book, but it's also a small manipulative that they can get involved in, and they're doing dialogue before you know it. And that's a really tough skill for kindergarten, like imagining 2 characters at the same time. It's a really high level skill, and it's synthesizing the structure and coming at it with their own words, which is just such a high level processing skill for them. So cardstock finger puppets are, are really entry point for kindergarten.